Welcome to the Finding Financial Freedom podcast with the Frugal Physician, where Dr. Disha Spath will be your companion on this exciting financial adventure. Get ready to conquer debt, build wealth, and embrace a mindful spending lifestyle that will empower you to live life on your own terms.
This episode is brought to you by Black Swan Real Estate, led by physician investor Dr. Elaine Stageberg. Dr. Stageberg, a Mayo Clinic-trained physician, together with her husband Nick, has spent years building Black Swan Real Estate into a diversified, large-scale portfolio, now approaching $500 million across 2,000 doors. Now, through their Secure Freedom Fund, a 10% fixed rate of return offering, you can invest alongside them. The Secure Freedom Fund offers institutional quality real estate opportunities designed to deliver strong cash flow, long-term growth, and remarkable tax advantages. This fund is uniquely structured so that each investor can tailor it to their own individual goals. This fund offers a minimum investment of just $25,000, the ability to choose monthly cash flow distributions, or to elect the compounding option for higher overall growth, the option to exit the fund on your own timing, the flexibility to invest in your personal name, a trust, an LLC, or a retirement account, and so much more. If you're an accredited investor who's ready to diversify beyond Wall Street and invest with experienced, trustworthy operators who've been exactly where you are, visit securefreedomfund.com today to learn more. From there, you can review the slides, watch the webinar, and even book a call directly one-on-one with Dr. Elaine Stageberg. That's securefreedomfund.com. Hello, and welcome back to Finding Financial Freedom. I'm Dr. Disha Spath, hospitalist, mom, and the frugal physician. If you're in medicine, you know the drill. Years of training, growing debt, and the hope that somewhere is a path to relief from debt. But as of mid-2025, there's been a major shakeup in how federal student loans work. The new One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or as many of us are calling it, the Big Beautiful Bill, has upended repayment plans, eliminated some options, and introduced a new plan called RAP, the Repayment Assistance Plan. Today, I'm thrilled to speak with Aaron Smith, co-founder of Savi, a seasoned student loan policy expert and advocate. Aaron has worked with the Department of Education, Congress, the White House, and he carried student debt himself. Together, we're going to map out what the changes mean for doctors, what options remain, what's new, what's gone, and how to make wise decisions now so you don't get caught up in a bad plan 5 years from now. Aaron, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to get into this. We were talking about how the medical education journey, we often have to make decisions 4 or 5 years in advance, right? About what we're going to be doing. And as we're taking on all this debt, we need to know what's coming when it comes to student loan management so we can make wise decisions based on that. So I'm really excited to get into this conversation with you, Aaron. First of all, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your life?
Sure. So, Aaron Smith, co-founder of Savi. I am originally from New York. I went to law school in DC at Georgetown and took on a bunch of student loan debt for that. I then started a nonprofit called Young Invincibles, which actually got our start doing work around healthcare policy for young adults. So, for example, we worked on a part of the Affordable Care Act that allowed young people to stay on their parents' plan to 26, but ended up doing work around a bunch of different policy areas, higher education, employment. Obviously, student debt is a huge issue for many people. And so I did a lot of work with Department of Education, CFPB, the Hill, the White House, all around different aspects of student loan policy, even as I was navigating my own student loan repayment. And so it was through that experience that I really realized that there was this need and opportunity to help people better navigate student loan debt. Many of us, I know people who go to medical school, average debt is over $200,000 now. But, people, particularly people who are dealing with such high amounts of debt, they really have so much at stake when it comes to these financial decisions about what repayment plan do I get into? How do I think about loan forgiveness? All of these things could really have huge impact on their financial future. And so what we did at Savi was we built a platform that helped people really navigate all those different government options. That was our focus to start. Think of it almost like a TurboTax for student loans. And so we offer this as a benefit to hundreds of employers, membership groups, financial institutions. We work with many very large hospital systems to provide Savi as a benefit for their employees. We also do things like student loan employer contribution, where the employer actually contributes to pay down your debt. There's a new student loan retirement match. So we offer a kind of a comprehensive set of student loan benefit options. But at our core is guidance. Is how do we help people understand the policy changes? And we'll talk about it. Policy changes feels like, week by week on student loans. But then also actually doing the applications, which oftentimes the application process itself is what trips people up. And
Mm-hmm.
so we've digitized that process and make it very easy for our
Nice.
users. So that's a little bit about me and Savi.
Wow, sounds like you're doing great things. Honestly, as a doctor, often we count on people like you, lawyers on Capitol Hill, to keep PSLF alive because we know that you're in the same boat as us, and
Yes.
we highly appreciate your work in that field. So thank you. So let's start on this big beautiful bill and the major changes. Can you clarify for us what are the major changes here that every physician with student loans needs to know? For example, which repayment plans have been eliminated and which are new?
Yeah. So I will divide my answer into changes that impact current borrowers and changes that will impact future. So for current borrowers, the current status quo is you have your standard repayment, which is typically 10 years repayment schedule. And then you have a series of different income-based repayment programs. Under President Biden, we had a SAVE plan, which was a new income-based repayment program that was blocked by the courts and has since been blocked by the Trump administration. But there's still a variety of these plans to choose from, and they generally will cap your payments based on your income, let's say 10% of your discretionary income. And many doctors, particularly who are earlier in their careers or in their residency, for example, may be in one of these income-based repayment programs. And it can literally mean going from $2,000 or $3,000 a month in monthly payments down to $50 a month, $100 a month. That's how big these kinds of plans can be for a lot of doctors. Also, this is important. There's public service loan forgiveness, which you referred to. So anyone who works, for a qualifying employer, which generally speaking is a nonprofit or government agency, many hospitals are nonprofits, and so doctors or nurses or other employees there could qualify to have their loans forgiven after a period of 10 years. And typically what you do is you enroll in one of these income-based plans at the same time as you get your employment certified, and after 10 years, the remaining balance is forgiven. So that is an important program and sort of set of options for a lot of doctors. The BBB, which passed, introduces a new type of income-based repayment program called RAP. That goes live next summer in July 2026. And the idea is that it will phase out many of the existing income-based plans and introduce this new plan. So the new plan is complicated in the sense of, under most of the old plans, there was an income amount, a threshold, 10% was a common one. The new plan varies that percentage based on your income. So lower earners might pay a smaller percentage of their income, and higher percentage earners might pay a higher percentage of their income. That's not necessarily good or bad. It might depend on your very specific situation to see, is that going to help me or hurt me versus my current plan?
talking about income, and this is gross income, not the adjusted gross for the RAP plan, right?
Right, exactly.
So you're not accounting for living expenses, basically.
There is, so just to be very clear, we haven't gotten the full regulations on the RAP plan. That's something that the department's going to be issuing over the next probably 6 months. And those will be typically where they will outline exactly how the income gets calculated, what gets included and what gets excluded. So, that's going to be important. Those details will really matter for people as they are tracking this. One important thing for people to understand is if you are currently in an income-based repayment plan, you will have an option of staying in that plan until 2028. If you're not currently in an income-based plan, you have to get in one before July 2026, and then you also keep that option. Now, that's really important because people may find that when the details of RAP come out and they do the math, that actually they're going to pay more under RAP than they would under their current plan. And so being able to lock in, let's say you're currently in the pay plan, being able to lock in that payment for another 2 or 3 years is a really important thing. Eventually, even those other plans will largely go away, and it will just be RAP. But so that's one bit of advice that we're giving people is if you do think that one of the existing repayment income-based plans is good for you, get enrolled in it now, and that'll help you lock that in for another couple years. And then if you're not currently in one, you might want to consider that before July 2026. But again, we'll know more on exactly how RAP will work, when some of these regulations come out. So a couple other things for current borrowers to be aware of. The BBB did not impact public service loan forgiveness. That's a big relief. I think many of us were concerned. There has been Republican opposition to public service loan forgiveness, and I think there was some concern that that would come out. But the truth is that public service loan forgiveness has pretty bipartisan support, and ultimately nothing really material emerged. There was some language earlier in the process that would have particularly impacted med students, actually, and that got stripped out in the final bill. So that was a good thing.
What was that?
It was basically going to limit PSLF for medical residents.
So it would make their residency payments not count for
Right.
PSLF, right? That's a huge deal because that's years. That's years that you're working more.
Yeah, and some of the hospitals obviously were very concerned about it and spoke out, and ultimately that was taken out of the bill. So the bill really doesn't change PSLF, which we saw as as a really good thing. So primary change for current borrowers is this new income-based plan called RAP. But on the future borrowers, the changes are much more dramatic, I would say. And that's particularly true for graduate students, where they're going to eliminate the Grad PLUS program, which I took advantage of the Grad PLUS program when I went to law school. It's basically, it is the gap filler for many students who are trying to go to a grad program. Now, these were not great loans. They often had a high interest rate. My interest rate, for example, my law school loans was 7.5%, but they were federal loans and they had a lot of the protections that other federal loans have. So, for example, I could get into income-based repayment programs. If I had some economic hardship, I had different options for limiting or delaying those payments. I could make them eligible for public service loan forgiveness. All pretty positive benefits that don't generally exist on the private side.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of concern. What does it mean that Grad PLUS loans go away? There's also going to be loan limits. I won't go into as great detail on, but they're going to place limits on just how much you can borrow in the federal system. I think that people generally who are looking at this think that there is going to be a big rush of private sector dollars moving into this space to try to provide private loans for, medical students who are generally viewed as pretty good risk. But, what does that mean? It means that they're going to do underwriting. So they're going to look at your financial background and maybe decide who to give credit to and who not to give credit to. The federal loans don't do that. They may ask for a cosigner. They might have high interest rates. And then obviously they're not going to have some of these protections. You're not going to be able to get public service loan forgiveness on all that private debt. You are going to have
Mhm.
to pay it back.
Mhm.
So that's going to radically shift, I think, how people think about how they afford some of these grad programs, particularly the very expensive ones like medical school. And I think it really remains to be seen exactly how students, the private sector, how colleges kind of respond. I think one of the critiques of Grad PLUS and programs like that is that it made it too easy to borrow and that people were taking on excessive amounts of debt and then having trouble paying it off.
And it was maybe skyrocketing the cost of college, because
And
the
then
colleges
colleges
knew.
were responding by saying, hey, you know what? I can just increase prices.
Right.
I think it's too early to say, are there any colleges who say, you know what, without some of these programs, there's the Grad PLUS, for example, we're actually going to reduce our costs.
Yes, let's see if it
We've yet
actually
to see
happens.
that.
Yeah.
We've yet to see a college, dramatically do that. But, I think that there will be more challenges. I think there's some concerns that lower income students and people from less wealthy backgrounds may have a harder time getting some of those loans, and that could impact who actually goes into medical school. So, yeah, a lot to be sort of figured out when it comes to the sort of future of financing your education.
Yeah, I mean, it is unfortunate. Hopefully, if we don't see the actual costs of college come down, hopefully it'll slow the rate of inflation of those costs. I mean, the rate of inflation of college prices has far outpaced the rate of inflation of the economy over the last
Oh,
few
yeah.
years,
There,
decades.
there was a time when college costs were going up 8% year over year, and inflation was 3%.
Three. Yeah.
And that has slowed. That has slowed really since COVID, but it's still incredibly expensive. I have young kids. I think you mentioned you have kids.
Yeah.
So just thinking about how to pay for college for them and grad school is already extremely daunting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would certainly. I think if we can bring down that kind of rate of growth, that would make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help obviously on the flip side, people from poor families, such as myself. I was a daughter of a single mother immigrant teacher, school teacher. So, I had to take out loans the only way for medical school. And, so for people like me, it's going to be limiting choices. I mean, back then I decided not to go to the more prestigious schools because of the higher loan, burden I would have to take on, and went to the lowest cost school instead, but I had that option. I don't think people in future generations from people like my family will have that option even because they won't be able to borrow enough to pay for that school, which is unfortunate. And hopefully, we can figure out some way. Things change. This is just temporary. So hopefully we'll figure out some way to make it happen for them still in the future. Let's hope. But
Yeah, and I think this is where the employer piece does fit in here. I think that we are seeing more and more interest in employers providing student loan benefits. That could be anything from guidance to helping giving advice and tools like Savi to help you actually take advantage of these various programs, to actually helping pay down student loan debt. And I
yeah, but they
wouldn't
have to get that debt in the first place,
Right,
you know, and
right,
get a job.
right, right. So it's I think that there are, yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think we'll see more from the employer side. We may see more from the university side trying to do innovative things to help students get on a path to getting that debt under control. But yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty there, I would say.
Yes. Let me ask you this. The standard repayment plan, does that apply towards PSLF due to the most recent rulings?
Technically, you can be on standard and do PSLF. The problem is that if you're making the standard payments, you should pay off your student loans after 10 years. And therefore, you're not going to have any balance remaining after the end of the 10. And therefore, the PSLF is not going to do you any good. You're
Right.
going to
Right.
you're going to hit your 10 years and you're going to have a zero balance.
What about
Uh,
those like extended standard repayment plans? There's like 25-year ones and
those ones do not count because I think
Mm,
there is an understanding that essentially you could cheat the system by just extending your plan out forever and then maximizing your forgiveness.
right.
So generally speaking, the like number one rule is you are going to look for an income-based repayment plan. Those all qualify for PSLF, and then there were the logic behind it was your income goes up, your payments go up.
Yeah.
So, a lot of doctors who have a very low payment on an income-based repayment plan while they're in residency, and then their income goes up, their payments go up, but they can afford to pay more when their salary goes up.
Yeah.
But they still might end up being eligible for loan forgiveness just because of the sheer amount of student debt that doctors have.
Right. Right. So let's talk about some of the technicalities. Is there anything that people that are pursuing PSLF right now should know about employer certification forms and payment tracking? Is there something they should be doing right now that might affect them?
Yeah, on PSLF, I mean, there's a few bits of advice I would give. One is, I think that at one point in time, you may have heard this stat that 99% of people were getting rejected for PSLF.
Hmm.
And that has improved somewhat, but a lot of the challenges still remain. And it's not just, oh, I got rejected. It's I go and check in with my servicer, and instead of having 8 years worth of credits, it only shows in the system that I have 5 years worth of credits.
Hmm.
And that's brutal. Like you made 3 years worth of payments, and it's only they're missing from the system.
Right.
So the number one thing is getting your employer certification form completed annually gives you the best chance of making sure that, yep, every year you're going to get certified. Okay, I made 12 more payments. It gets added on top. Don't wait you can technically wait till the very end and then just submit your employment certification form at the end. A lot of things can go wrong if you wait to the end in terms of getting that certified. Now, once you do submit an employment certification form and you get into PSLF, you're generally going to get shifted to you might move servicers to a servicer that specifically handles PSLF. And then again, once you're doing it, you want to submit your forms annually just to make sure that you're getting those 12 credits every single year. A couple other things I would highlight that people don't always realize. One, during COVID, payments were paused for the vast majority of student loan borrowers. You will get credit for those years, even though you are making $0 payments toward your PSLF. A lot of people don't realize that. That's a really nice benefit. And second, you can get credit for past employment. So let's say that you work for a nonprofit agency, government agency, or a government agency, then you move to a hospital. You can get credit for both your time at the hospital, but also potentially for the time before that if it's a qualifying employer. So you can kind of stack these things together. Savi will actually help you do that. So not only will we help you get your employer certification for your current employer, but we will help you kind of track down your past employer and get credit for those past payments.
Can they still be non-sequential? Like if you had a time in a private entity for a couple of years,
That's
and then
fine.
went back to non-for-profit? Okay.
Yeah. Another thing that is important for particularly doctors, a lot of hospital systems are complicated legal entities where they might have a for-profit arm of the hospital, a nonprofit arm of the hospital. Ultimately, where does your W-2 come from? What is the legal entity? That's going to determine, what is the qualifying entity there for purposes of PSLF. Again, we have a database that can help to determine if you're in that. The Department of Education has some tools as well that can help you sort of identify, if you qualify. If you're not sure, there's really not a harm in applying and seeing. Your employer has to certify that you work there, and ultimately it's the Department of Education's determination about what qualifies. There is, under the way the program is set up, 501c3 organizations are inherently included. However, there's a broader category of nonprofit. They might not be 501c3s, but nonprofits doing work around public health. And so there's also other organizations that might not technically be a 501c3 that can still qualify because of that sort of public health language as well.
Yeah. And there's some carve out, I think, advocated by like Kaiser physicians that if it's a for profit employer that is contracted with a non for profit hospital, that those doctors in certain states can still get credit for PSLF, right? I think it was like Texas and California.
Yeah, there's been a lot of work on this, actually. I think there's hope that they will formally broaden the definition of PSLF. Employers do have a fair amount of leeway for like a Kaiser, for example, but I think that there's hope that they will, even through regulation, clarify that entities like that, which are really doing public health work, they were intended to be counted under PSLF.
Yeah, it doesn't matter like to the doctor if they're if they're in a non-for-profit hospital, if they're working for a company that's technically non-for-profit, they're still providing the same services that are directly contracted with the hospital. So, um,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I love that when the employers are kind of going to bat for their employees and
mhm.
saying, no, no, I'm gonna stand up for you and say this is work that really should be counted. I think that's a great.
Yeah, absolutely. That's capitalism at its best.
Right. They have a self-interest. Like, they
Yeah.
want the best talent, and so part of that is saying, "Hey, this is a place that is friendly to the people who work there."
Right. So let's shift gears now and talk about outside of the federal repayment plans. Let's talk about private refinancing. A lot of people might be saying, well, this is just getting to be a complete headache and I can't keep up with the changes. I just want to, refinance, pay them off. Do you have any thoughts on that option and things people should know, pros and cons?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the refinancing market is changing. We have had very high rates for the last few years, and I think there's movement for interest rates to start coming down, and that will make refinancing a more attractive option for a lot of people, particularly people who maybe have done the math and are not going to have a reduced plan, a payment under income based, or they're not going to be eligible for public service loan forgiveness. So I think people should be, you know, it's very comes down to everyone's unique circumstances and their sort of career trajectory. Again, with private refi, you might be able to lower your interest rate, and that might result in a lower monthly payment, which could be very meaningful to you. You are not going to be able to use the government programs. There's no going back once you do the refi going forward. So if you think in your own career, you know what, I'm likely to be at or about this income going forward. I have a pretty stable career. I'm in the private sector, for example, then refi could be a really good option. If you think, hey, in a couple years, I was actually thinking about going back to the nonprofit side, or maybe I want to reduce my hours because I have other things going on in my life right now. Then it is a little more challenging to go all into private refi because you're not going to have those options to reduce them. Your payment's going to be what your payment is, and those lenders are going to operate like any other kind of private lenders. But
Mhm.
I do think so. Savi, we have a student loan refinance marketplace, for example, that we've built in. There's definitely a category of people for whom refi makes sense. And I think as interest rates come down, we're likely to see an even bigger number of people where they're going to have a decision to make, particularly when you took on grad school loans that have 7.5% interest rates. They might start to see some savings on the private refi side.
Nice. All right. Well, Aaron, let's just end with a fun breakout segment. Let's do a Dr. Debt decision drill. You
Okay.
ready?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to tell you a scenario. You tell me what you'd advise, like what plan, what action, what risks to watch out for.
Sure.
Okay, let's go. A resident with $300,000 in debt, low income now, planning on an academic career and expecting to work for a non-for-profit hospital.
I think this person should strongly consider getting into an income-based repayment plan right now before the RAP program takes effect. They will likely, at 300,000 in debt, they will likely see a huge reduction from what the standard plan would be.
Mm-hmm.
And they should be getting into PSLF as well. Even if they don't end up going the nonprofit route, there's really no harm in doing that while you're in your residency.
Yeah. Scenario B, an attending making a high salary but living in an expensive metro area, married, children, significant student loan balance. What would you tell them?
It depends on their future career trajectory and the type of employer that they're working at. If they are in just going to be in a high income situation, but are unlikely because of their income to get a substantial reduction through an income-based repayment plan, they might be a good candidate for a refi. It depends. They would have to look at their numbers though and think about sort of their future career trajectory.
That brings up a good point, actually. Okay, scenario C, a doctor currently using Save or Pay, unsure about what to do before the elimination date.
So this person is in good shape as far as getting the extension to 2028 on the plan if they choose to stay in that plan, but they should wait until the regulations come out, likely in late 2025 or early 2026, to really, and there will be calculators including Savi that will be able to tell them exactly what they would pay under RAP and be able to kind of compare the two options. There could be circumstances where RAP is better. There could be scenarios where RAP is worse. So they're really going to have to wait. But the fortunate thing is they are already enrolled in a plan, which they can continue.
But Save has been totally eliminated
Not
right
not
now. It's just a
save, but under like a pay as you earn
pay.
or pay.
All right, okay. All right. So the people that are on Save now, have they automatically been switched to what is there? What's the new plan that they've automatically been switched to? I forget.
If they're on save, they should try to enroll in one of the compliant plans. There are those other options, and they do have that time before July 1. There was the announcement recently that SAFE plans are going to start accruing interest. For a while, people on SAFE plans just had $0 payments, but
And no
that's going to
interest
start.
accruing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so that's going to start accruing interest. So they should be looking at least to switch into one of the compliant plans.
Hmm. I think for doctors, a lot of it has to do with like some of the other IDR plans have a requirement. They have to show the need to be on that IDR plan, and not be making too much. So I think IBR, that requirement has been taken away, right? The hardship.
Yeah, exactly. I would
Yeah.
say, for
Yeah.
example, for some of these doctors, pay might not work because of that, because of the those
Partial
kind of
financial hardship.
requirements, right?
Right.
But an IBR would work, and that's generally the 10% or 15% of their discretionary income.
All right. Oh man, so many technicalities and so
I
many ways
know,
to
and
think
and
about
I
it.
I hate to say this, the best thing for people is to, so for example, the Savi tool is designed to capture all the different sort of unique elements of these different plans and coming into there, you're going to get your best sense of where you actually, what your options are, depending on your marital status and your family income and all these factors. And so using tools like that, Department of Education has tools as well, is a great place to start.
All right, Aaron, thank you so much. This has been incredible and sobering. All the different things we all need to know in order to manage our student loans. The changes are big, and especially for those of us in medicine. They're very impactful, but you've given us some clarity about what's going on and what remains and what to do now and what to expect as new guidelines come out, what to watch out for. So thank you. To our listeners, make sure that you are paying attention to these updates that are coming out and, thinking about your plans for your debt management. Like Aaron said, though, there are things that you are not going to have to change your plan immediately. There is a grace period, and you may be able to remain in your current plan. So make sure that you are looking at all of those options as you decide what to do with your student loan debt. Remember, it's very easy, and I will 100% be the example of that. It's very easy to just be like, screw this, and just, privately refinance quickly and just like pay it off quickly. I've done that, but it was a very emotional decision that I probably should have taken longer to think about, but I don't regret doing it. But my advice to you would be that, think about it. $300,000, $200,000 is a lot of cash that you could use in the future to build your freedom. So make sure you are utilizing all the tools that are available to you. And, despite the craziness and the mayhem in the student loan world right now, everything changing every other day, try to maintain calm, maintain your inner peace, and sit down with your family maybe every 6 months and just see what's changed and whether your plan needs to change. But do it in a very measured fashion, not by emotion.
Yeah, that's great advice. The only other thing I'd say is be an advocate for yourself in the workplace too. I think that doctors in particular have power within the workplace to say, hey, this is a huge financial challenge for me. What are you doing, employer, to step up and to provide the kind of benefits that can make employees successful?
It's a great point. And there are some great employer to employee friendly things that have been built into this plan, into this new bill, and hopefully people will take advantage of it. Stay strong, y'all. You got this. And in the end, we've got your back. So if you need any more help, please make sure to check out thefrugalphysician.com for the student loan resources we have there. And please check out Aaron Smith's Savi, which is an AI tool to help you navigate the student loan world. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, share it with your medical colleagues, leave a review. It helps us spread the word and get more doctors this very valuable information. Until next time, I'm Dr. Disha Spath, reminding you, while laws change, your choices matter. Be proactive, be informed, and you can still build towards financial freedom. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Stay frugal, y'all.
The content shared on this podcast should not be taken as individualized financial advice. We are here to share our knowledge and experiences, but it is crucial to consult with professionals such as accountants, financial advisors, or attorneys who can provide personalized guidance based on your specific needs.